July 16th, 2014. Guys, we've been watching Israel, and we've been watching ISIS move through Iraq, and they're moving stronger today. Some of the Iraqi forces had to back away. And Israel has a 5-hour ceasefire in place. The UN asked them to do that, and they agreed to do it, and Hamas agreed to do it. We'll see if they'll stick to it in order to get some necessary supplies in there. But we cannot take our eyes off the southern border, and that may be what a lot of people want us to do. I'm not talking about the children that are coming in there. We know that there's some problems involved with that, but we're supposed to take care of God's children. Now, I'm not talking about the gangs and things like that. And I'm completely aware before someone makes a comment that these children are being used. I understand that. But God said it would be better that a millstone was hanged upon your neck than to do something wrong to one of his little ones. Remember that. Here's the problem. Because the open borders, which I think are open on purpose, I think our political leaders have done this. Nancy Pelosi has a speech that I recorded about this very thing a few months ago. But I want to update a couple things here. This article goes back about a month ago, and it was interesting then, and I've been trying to keep an eye on what was going to happen because no one knew at this point, but I'm going to read it to you at that time. It says, "It's not often that a North Korean flag freighters turn up near America's shores, but when they do, they deserve attention. North Korea has a prolific record of arms smuggling, narcotics dealing, counterfeiting, terrorist ties, and missile and nuclear proliferation. So let's hope U.S. authorities are keeping a close eye on the North Korean cargo ship called the Mudu Bong, which late last month called at Cuba, then vanished from the commercial shipping grid for more than a week. This past Thursday, July 10th, the Mudu Bong reappeared at Havana, then began streaming north of Cuba. As of this writing, it's cruising the Gulf of Mexico, not all that far from the Mexican port of Tampico, or for that matter, the coast of Texas." Now, this article goes on to say the Mudu Bong's mission could be entirely legitimate, but its behavior bears some disturbing similarities to last year's voyage of another North Korean freighter, the Chunggang, which last summer sailed into the Caribbean, picked up an illicit load of weapons in Cuba, and got caught trying to smuggle its cargo through the Panama Canal. Acting on a tip, Panamanian authorities searched the Chunggang. They discovered some 240 tons of arms, related materials, including 2 disassembled MiG-21 jet fighters, additional MiG engines, surface-to-air missile system components, night vision goggles, and ammunition, all hidden under more than 200,000 bags of Cuban sugar. Now, we got Cuba down there doing this. We got North Korea in the middle of it, and we got our borders open. Documents found on board the Chunggang proved a trove of information for members of the United Nations panel of experts on North Korean sanctions, who summarized some of their findings in a UN report released this March. The investigators were able to reconstruct an array of techniques with which the Chunggang tried to hide its illicit mission. They concluded that both the arms shipment and the related transaction between North Korea and Cuba had violated UN sanctions on North Korea. The UN report describes how the Chunggang set out in mid-2013 from North Korea, took on fuel in a Russian Far East port, crossed the Pacific, and transited the Panama Canal into the Caribbean. The ship then disappeared from the commercial shipping grid by switching off, listen, its onboard transponder, the automatic identification system known as AIS, with which vessels, for reasons of maritime safety, are required to signal their identity and real-time location. While its transponder was switched off, the Chunggang discharged cargo in Havana, then drifted around north of Cuba for about 10 days, just like this new ship, then made a covert stop at the Cuban port of Mariel, where the weapons were loaded on board. The ship then called at another Cuban port, Puerto Padre, where the sugar, a legitimate cargo, was loaded on top of the contraband. It goes on to say, then for 9 straight days from July 1st through the 9th, the Mu Du Bong stopped signaling on AIS and disappeared from the commercial shipping grid. It's possible the ship was simply sitting quietly at anchor. But there are echoes here not only of the Chung Chung gang, but of a number of other North Korean flag freighters which over the years have followed the pattern of dropping off the grid in the vicinity of Cuba. In congressional testimony last September, the illicit trafficking expert Hugh Griffiths of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute described this practice as a common risk indicator of maritime trafficking. Iran in recent years has used the same tactic to mass sanctions busting activities on all its oil tankers. According to ship tracking data logged by Lloyd's, that's Lloyd's of London, the Mudong Bong recently reappeared on commercial radar on July 10th, again signaling from Havana. Since then, the ship has signaled as sailing north and west into heavy shipping traffic in the Gulf of Mexico. But our borders are wide open. You got the craziest dude in the world running North Korea. You got the other 3 craziest people in the world running the United States. Not a good combination opening our borders. Now, this came out today. This is the Maritime Bulletin, and it's got the accidents, traffic, shipping, stats, and report, things like that. But notice today's date, July 16th, 2014, this afternoon at 2:02 a.m. Now, I don't know why all this information is coming out today, but it is. It's saying the suspicious North Korean freighter Mudong Bong ran aground in the Gulf of Mexico. North Korean general cargo vessel Mudong Bong grounded off Mexican port of Tuxpan, Gulf of Mexico on July 14th, 2 days ago. Officials said refloating may take several days. Vessels and ballast was to call Tuxpan port, presumably for taking shipments of sugar. They like to hide stuff under that sugar. It says, such a trivial accident attracted a lot of attention from major media because of the behavior of North Korean is similar to that of another North Korean freighter. Now, there hasn't been that much major media reporting this. It says and this other Korean freighter is the one I just read to you about. It says it was caught with arms on board by Panama authorities last year. Some 240 tons of Cuban weapons and military gear were found hidden under 220,000 sacks of sugar in holes of Chung Chung gang. Said this one, again, Mudong Bong left Havana on July 10th. It is listed as a general cargo vessel. Gives the number, built 1983, flag North Korea, manager Taedong Gang Songbak Ltd, Pyongyang. We have to watch the southern borders. Heads up, be safe.